coming from my career started in the server room and I've ended up in the boardroom. So, coming from that perspective, you realize that you may have amazing technical abilities and you can see all of the problems and so on, but the frustration comes when the leaders and those empowered to make the decisions to fix or mitigate risks don't understand. And I think that that creates a communication gap.
Welcome to Secure and Simple podcast. In this podcast, we demystify cybersecurity governance, compliance with various standards and regulations, and other topics that are of interest for consultants, CISOs, and other cybersecurity professionals. Hello, I'm Dejan Kosutic, the CEO at Advisera and the host of Secure and Simple podcast. Today, we have very interesting guest. His name is Paul C Dwyer, and he's the founder and CEO of Cyber Risk International, consultancy based in Ireland, and also the founder and president of ICTTF, International Cyber Threat Task Force. Now, Paul has held various positions, so I'll try to read all of them. There are many here. So, chairman of the UK National Crime Agency Industry Group, also advisor to National Counter-Terrorism Security Office, advisor to NATO on countering hybrid cyber threats, advisor to UK Defence Committee, DEFCOM in Parliament, Deputy Chair of Organized Crime Task Force Industry Group, and also interim global CISO for numerous multinational organizations. So a huge and very successful career. In today's podcast, you'll learn about digital resilience from the business and strategic point of view, and what is the role of company boards with regards to resilience and cybersecurity. So welcome to the show,
Thank you
Paul.
so much, and I really appreciate the invitation. I'm looking forward to this.
Great to have you here. So, you have obviously a big experience, more than 30 years, across all these military and law enforcement and also business organizations. And was there any, particular experience which actually drove you towards this thinking of actually that connecting the boards and resilience is one of the key things to do?
Yeah, there's probably many different instances where I realized that coming from my career started in the server room and I've ended up in the boardroom. So, coming from that perspective, you realize that you may have amazing technical abilities and you can see all of the problems and so on, but the frustration comes when the leaders and those empowered to make the decisions to fix or mitigate risks don't understand. And I think that that creates a communication gap. And I really realized that was there for many years. So as my career developed and I got more into the areas of regulations and more into communication and education, I realized that this was, if you like, a weak muscle that I needed to build up, was the ability to communicate at that level. So I took a very conscious effort to start looking like a board member. I would dress like a board member. I would appear like a board member, everything else like that. And that helped even with the communication style. It kind of boils down to this, which is, the tail never wags the dog, right? So the answer lies in the head. You have to get leadership involved. If you don't, you're not going to succeed. Full stop. You're just not going to succeed because leaders set policy, policy sets culture, and culture is going to be how the organization deals with cybersecurity, information security, digital resilience. Take your flavor. It's all going to come from leadership down. And if the leadership don't understand, or aren't empowered with enough knowledge, and that communication piece isn't there, it's not going to work well, if at all.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that's something we
Hmm.
focused on, and we thought, well, look, how do you demystify this? How do you distill this down into a way? Um, and we would use case studies. For example, somebody coming into the board with a vulnerability scan report, saying, "Hey, look, we've 50,000 vulnerabilities. Some of them are level 5, some are level 4." And a so what moment. And that so what moment is that the techie who comes into the board with a vulnerability scan report doesn't realize that board members simply looking at them and going, "Great, but so what? What does it mean?" Make it relate back to the business, make it relate back to the individual. And some of the skills or techniques, if you like, that I developed along the way was, if I was going to meet a board and I knew I was meeting, so for example, the risk officer or the CFO or the CEO, um, I would have a different message for each of them because humans are
Hmm.
innately selfish and they only care what affects them. So I would have a different message for the marketing officer, I would have a different message for the CFO, a different one for the CEO. So they all got it. and they all, we have to take action on this. But when you're
Hmm.
briefing a board, when you're trying to communicate at that highest level, everything has to be related back to the business. If you're not giving them the what the risk is, what the downsides of it are, and what their options are, well, then you're failing in your job to do what you're meant to do. You know, whether you're coming from a
Hmm.
consultancy aspect or a service aspect or somebody internally in the organization is trying to communicate to that board level. You have to be able to give them those options because they want to go wham, bam, make a decision and either accept the risk, mitigate a risk, transfer a risk, but they can make decisions. And
Yeah,
so it's
yeah,
great from a governance and oversight perspective. That so we found a real game changer was making sure that the boards had bought in. We have a phrase here in Ireland: skin in the game. If they didn't have skin in the game, as in they either committed time or money to this process, we would simply jog on and just come from the point of view of there's plenty of other people need our help and need to work with us and everything else like that. But if leaders aren't engaging, then kind of way it's kind of futile for everybody that's involved. And in fact, even within our own courses, our leadership courses like the CISO course, I've often been asked by CISOs say, "Well, how do I engage my board and so on?" But if you fail to engage the board, they're simply not engaging. You might want to update your CV and go work for a company that appreciates you and needs you to help to garnish that forward. But the flip side of that, if I may, is the amount of times I've met with senior cybersecurity people, let's say a CISO in a bank, and so they'll be introduced, we'll be getting to know each other a little bit, and he'll say to the CISO, "Oh, congratulations on the new role. How does this organization make money?" Shrugs her shoulders. No, they mortgages, wealth management, private banking. I don't know. Okay. So you don't know what's going on a boardroom level, a strategic level. Is the business going to go digital? Are they getting rid of all the retail banks? You don't know any of this, but you're somehow responsible for securing the digital future of that
yeah.
organization. The complete disconnect. You have to be at the table. You have
Hmm.
to be at the top table. And the board needs
Hmm.
to understand that. So whether you're sitting at the top table or at least you're communicating with the top table, that's a key to success.
Hmm. Now, how do security professionals have to then grasp this business side of the company, this core business, and the strategic decisions that are made in a company? So, how basically to get to all this information and understand all
Okay,
this?
so a lot of this is down to people skills. It's down to more soft skills in relation to building trust, building rapport with existing leaders that are there. The default mode for
Mhm.
most leaders in an organization is that an IT department or a security department, they're no different than the department that cleans the toilets. Your service department, whatever that organization is, you're not a fee earner. You're not generating wealth for that company. So until they understand that you're an integral part delivering something important and valuable to the organization, they're probably not going to give you a whole lot of airtime, a whole lot of space to get that. So that takes time to
Mhm.
build that up. But if again, it's even into the optics of this. If someone is turning up in an engineer's t-shirt into an environment or a culture where they're all wearing, boots in a boardroom meeting or whatever it happens to be, there's going to be a massive, even cultural disconnect there for them to take that person serious. So they need to understand that they understand that, and then they need to understand the language of it. What's a business value chain? If they can't answer that, and they get it confused with a supply chain, how are they communicating with the business when the business is talking about things like if they're not aware of it, they could be technically brilliant around the technical aspects of cybersecurity, but if they don't understand that that organization has to be complying with GDPR, PCI, DORA, UK Operation Resilience Framework,
Yeah,
NIS2, and they don't understand what these things are, then they're always going to just be in the lens of technical. Therefore, the people who are looking at them and talking to them are just going to see them as techies because it's not their comfort
yeah,
zone.
yeah.
So there's a middle ground they have to meet. And
Hmm.
that's, a lot of the work we do is empowering the boards to be able to understand what the techies are talking about. But if you like, and I don't mean techies in a disparaging way, but this is all about language communications. If somebody's walking into a boardroom or they're talking to senior leaders in an organization and they're using acronyms, they're they're gone. The boards just go, oh,
Not
yeah,
going to
yeah.
work. Yeah.
They're not going to understand what they're talking about. So you need to find the middle ground in
Hmm.
language and
Hmm.
get those two things aligned. I mean, that's what makes things like, for example, DORA. the Digital Operation Resilience Act, really interesting because it's making these things legal mandates. A DORS document,
Yep.
Digital Operation Resilience Strategy
Hmm.
document. It's a document that simply says that you know what the business is going to do for the next few years and you know what your digital strategy is for the next few years. It's a no-brainer. But yet this has to become a
Yep.
legal
Yep.
mandate.
Yep.
And so I think those softer skills, those people skills, it's too easy for people to get comfortable in the server room, in the back room, and quite
Hmm.
honest, give themselves grandiose titles as they get longer into their careers. So they go from a network manager to an IT manager to a CIO and then call themselves a CISO. What are they really? Because if we look transatlantic at a CISO is probably on a seven-figure salary and entering into the board and taking those kinds of responsibilities. But a lot of the CISOs we'll see across Europe are essentially senior people that have worked in at the ICT industry or IT industry. But they haven't
Yeah.
developed those other skills, the political skill. How do you lead? How do you
Hmm.
how do you sell? How do you sell an idea in a meeting? So to get to
Hmm.
those levels, you have to have sales skills. And I don't mean that you're going in and saying, hey, this week only, 199, that kind of sales. It's selling your passion, it's selling your idea and convincing someone there's a problem and convincing someone you have a solution. That's communication.
Hmm. Okay. Does this mean that, let's say, CISOs should go for a training like an MBA, or maybe to some more communication related training?
Well, I kind of have an extreme view on this, and I think most academia is a waste of time in the industry we work in. It's so old. It's so out of date. By the time somebody learns that it's not what the industry needs. I'm a big advocate of micro credentials, short-term courses, those kind of things. Because if somebody knows they're missing a particular skill in this day and age with online academies and so on, they can get those skills and upskill themselves really quickly in a really flexible way. Get
Yep.
the skill and move on.
Yep.
They don't necessarily need to change career path completely or dedicate a few years of their
Hmm.
life to developing one skill when potentially a weekend course could do it.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, you also mentioned that when you actually are meeting some senior executive or a board, that you're actually preparing a different message for each person depending on what let's say area they cover. So, how do you actually do our research, and then how do you, based on this research, develop a specific message, let's say for the chief sales executive or chief financial officer, or something like this? So, how
So
do you make
I
this
mean,
research and preparation?
in many ways, it's good old open source intelligence on LinkedIn. It's good old doxing. It's working with who are the board members. Um,
Hmm.
what's that phrase where if you've got 5 hours to cut down a tree, spend 4 hours sharpening the axe and 1 hour cutting down the tree or whatever. It's about preparation and. In that limited amount of time you can spend preparing for that meeting means that you're not going in with um, against your hubris into a meeting thinking, I know it all, I'll handle this meeting with these guys in here so they haven't got a clue and all that kind of stuff. You're parking that and you're paying it the respect to do the research and understand, well, this individual who may be involved in their career in that company who had a big incident. So I'm going to mention something maybe about ransomware. I want to trigger their emotional
Hmm.
points. Right? I'm going to go, as you know, when an incident happens in ransomware, there can be significant impact, qualitative risk, quantitative risk, all those kind of things. And you'll make those. But there are bog standard things you can say to people. A CFO is going to be worried about money. So you're going to talk about audits. So
Hmm.
the marketing officer, chief marketing officer, is going to be talking about, qualitative risk and reputational damage and trust in the community and stakeholders and so on like that. You're going to get onto the risk officer maybe about regulations and maybe losing your operating license. And the CEO is worried about it all and also worried about their bonuses. Are they going to
Hmm.
deliver? And when you start, there's a great term which is an automatic governance event that when you tell a board something that is a real material risk to their organization, they have a duty to respond to that. Now, the response can be we accept, but most cases, the response will be we need to mitigate this and we need to transfer this risk. So if you're walking into an organization and you said, well, we've identified your critical important business function is your banking app, but actually one of your key suppliers is failing in their assessment. That's something the board needs to know and they need to deal with it. Now, it could be something even in their own architecture, where you've deemed and you explain from a technical perspective and say, guys, look, your risk levels here are 3, your controls are at 2, the gap is residual risk, and that's the legal mandate that they need to be informed on that. So even these basic terms,
Mhm.
what's a threat, what's a vulnerability, what's a risk, how many people working in the world of cybersecurity really know the difference between them? This is the basic business language so that they need to understand these things
Yeah.
and not just throw jargon around for the sake of it. And understand the difference between
Mhm.
quantitative and qualitative risk and be able to provide examples of them and never get emotional and always be factual. And remember, when they're communicating in that level, it's macro level. You're literally going in with sound bites and you're throwing sound bites, but you're ready for the retort. If they say, you said this, back it up. And this is what a leadership meeting is like. It's a challenge. And you go, well, I'm glad you asked me
Yeah.
that because this is what happened to this company, this company, this company. And of course, the next phase of that question will always be, so what do you think we should do? And this is about communication. Through that communication, you're establishing trust, and they will trust the individual more, whether you're a vendor, whether you're an employee, whatever. They're going to trust more that you know your subject matter, you know their organization, you care. The most important of the people, and I always say this with organizations when I'm advising them, is the people that can help you most are within your organization. They're the ones that care. They're the ones that maybe even love the organization. They may have
Yeah.
dedicated 20 years of their life to that organization. A consultant in a shiny suit and tie coming in is there for the money, right? They
Mhm.
may have expertise and experience from elsewhere, and they can guide you and they have value. But do they care what happens as much as the people internally? Do they know where the skeletons are? Do they know where the issues are, the legacy systems, culturally what the challenges are? Well, all of those answers are
Yeah.
internally. So it's why
Mhm.
and why I admire the work you do and your organization as well, because anybody who shares knowledge and empowers people out there, that's a really good thing to do because we should be teaching people how to fish. We should be empower them
Thank you.
and be able to give them
Thank.
the tools and guidance that they need. They will need people like us at
Yeah.
times as advisors and stuff, but they don't need
Mhm.
body shopping. They don't need teams turning up with Excel spreadsheets and Microsoft Word and starting off and writing assignments and pretending that they know at this organization better than the people that have worked there for 15 years. Just that
Oh, empowerment, I would say
yeah.
empowerment and basically this transfer know-how towards the people that work in the companies is very important to
Exactly,
live with that.
and then trust at
Yeah.
that level between, like I act as a mentor for a lot of CISOs and CIOs of organizations as well, because sometimes they just want 30 minutes to bounce something off you or just run something by you. It could be a 5-minute phone call, could be anything, but just to be able to have people in the loop that you can go, hey, this is complex. Looking at this, how do we do it? Those kind of scenarios. The human network that
Mhm.
people will build in their career is the most important part of their career. I would say it's up there with education because what you don't know and you haven't educated yourself through what you've learned online or in college or whatever it happens to be, and what you've experienced, that's one side of it. But being able to leverage people you trust that have that experience and have that knowledge, that's golden. If I had an ISO 27001 and I've got lots of companies certified, whatever, I think default I'd reach out to you, right? Because I know everybody has their wheelhouse and everybody has their specialty areas and all that kind of stuff. So it's
Yeah.
knowing that you don't have to know everything, but you have access to those experts as well.
Mhm. Mhm. Now, what I see very often, CISOs have a problem on how to connect actually this, well, technical part of cybersecurity with the strategic business
Mm.
part, and basically how to make actually cyber something that is actively supporting the business strategy and the vision of the company. Do you have any suggestions here on how to
Yeah,
do this connection?
yeah, I think it's actually got a lot easier recently, and that's because of Dora. And I've often, suggested to organizations who aren't in the financial sector that they should adopt Dora. Now, Dora's horrible. Don't get me wrong; it's a horrible document, and the level one, the level twos aren't much nicer. It's all ugly, but all the concepts are there and all the pieces it's asking you to do are all relevant for a digital business or a business operating in the digital economy.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if you're aviation.
Yeah.
There's pretty much everything in Dora will still, okay, if you're in retail. I mean, would Marks and Spencers or Land Rover have issues if they were Dora compliant? I don't think so. So I mean, it's a blueprint of um, cybersecurity with governance and oversight. And it's the governance and oversight has been the
Mhm.
weakest part. of, there've been many brilliant cybersecurity people who have worked night and day to implement cybersecurity frameworks or information security management systems into organizations. But if the oversight and governance is not there and the accountability piece is not there, ultimately they will fizzle out or they may not develop. So yeah, it's an important one. But I would say that piece of connecting it up is, it gets real with the business when some of the talks I've done recently have been about trust. So when you trust something, you make yourself vulnerable to it. And I often talk about the financial sector. So the financial sector traditionally, to establish trust with their clients, so that because if you trust them, you make yourself vulnerable to them. So you're handing them your hard-earned physical cash back in the day. That's going into a bank vault. They work off the fiat system. And when you walk into that bank, they had like big, majestic columns outside the big doors of the bank. They had marble floors, brass fittings. All of these are trust signals. You can trust us
Yes.
and give us your money. And we'll mind your money.
Mhm.
And it's okay. You work away and have all your wages put in, and you can trust us. Now, in the world now that we live in of digital trust, how do you go from marble floors to mobile and have digital trust? Success stories here, Revolut, 40 million customers. And
Yes.
this is what the holy grail of what everybody's at in business now is like, how do I digitize and bring my business online, digital transformation, but keep trust with the customers? And that is about having effective cyber risk management. Now, whether that's built on ISO 27001 or DORA or NIST-CSF or whatever it happens to be, whatever the framework hybrid model is that you're doing, it's been able to be understand what your business is, understand what your assets are, understand there's governance and accountability, understand your supply chain, and have it all connected. It can't be in silos. And
Yes. Yeah, especially if if
no, no, go
sorry.
on. Yeah.
Yeah, especially if cyber professionals, or let's say CISOs, can actually recognize how this cyber component, especially if you let's say kind of translate it into
Mm,
trust element, right, can actually support all kind of these digital initiatives. And this could be in general, let's say, trust. It can also be a trust issue of a particular product, and these kind of things. So basically, it's then it actually becomes then cyber actually becomes a, I would say, active participant in supporting a business strategy.
100%, because trust is an asset. And if the organization's you look at any brand and they have a logo, and that logo has a ridiculous value on it, because what that logo means to somebody is a trust. Has Marks and Sparks, Marks and Spencers, taken a hit on the trust people will have in that brand and that logo and everything else like that. And people need to understand that if you trust an organization is able to handle a digital infrastructure and a digital business. So when things go wrong, they can handle them. And we all know things will go wrong. It could be all hazards approach. It could be Mother Nature, global warming. It could be a nation state
Mhm.
attack. It could be critical infrastructure going down. Things will go wrong, but how do you handle it? How do you respond? How do you recover? And that's resilience. So, it's a bigger part. And I think the smart companies and the smart providers have realized that those companies who are investing in digital trust are the ones that will survive and thrive, because they're going to be able to grow and grow their client base and grow their service base, and so on exponentially, because they can innovate and they can adopt technology and not be fearful of, well, we're not quite sure what that means. If you don't know what the foundations are in your digital infrastructure, and you're not confident of how an actual application is being delivered. And let's be honest, that's the way it in a lot of organizations. How are you going to embrace AI? Because they're not sure, is that the straw that'll break the camel's back? What will really happen? A lot of organizations aren't even sure of data flow, ingress points, egress points on the network. It's fundamental stuff, you know, and that's why something like a regulatory framework puts manners on a situation. And whatever the reality is the
Yeah.
reality, and it's working with that, bring it forward.
Mhm. Now, let's kind of try to clarify some basic
Mm.
terms here. So, you mentioned resilience very
Yeah.
often, and of course, DORA, the Digital Operations Resilience Act, is about resilience. So, how is resilience different from business continuity or from cybersecurity?
Okay. Great question. So we would see cybersecurity as mainly being defensive. So it's actually a term. I hate the term cybersecurity, and let me explain why. Because it's the reason why our company became Cyber Risk International, and the reason being, cyber means internet, means computer based. Secure, the word security means free from risk. So, how can you use the internet? How can you use all of the ICT services that are provided around the world and services and integrate with them and exchange data all over and be free from risk? So, it's a kind of an oxymoron. It's kind of a lie in itself, the term be using cyber free from risk. Now, cyber risk management is about using all of this and managing the risks associated with it. So we've got our cybersecurity, we've got our risk management. Now, digital resilience is being able to prove that and being able to minimize, or mainly being able to prove that you can detect if something goes wrong, being able to respond to it, and being able to recover. It's the acknowledgement. If you think back, Dejan, to uh, pre about a decade ago, uh, maybe even a little bit longer than that. One of the first companies in the world to come out and acknowledge and it was going back to this kind of FBI quote about there's those companies that know they're being hacked, those ones that don't, and there was this realization that um, hacks are inevitable, incidents are inevitable. They could be operational ones. I mean, I often use cases of operational resilience where a CIO, for example, in the Trustee Savings Bank in 2018, messed up an update, took the bank down for 232 days. 80,000 customers walked away. That bank went from a profit making bank to a loss making bank over one incident, but he personally got fined
Yeah.
£81,000. So when you start looking at things like that, you realize so things will happen. We need to know who is responsible for them, but we also need to know when they happen. You go back to those
Yeah.
horrible statistics that we often see about, the majority of hacks that have happened in the global companies in this world, the bad guys run their network for an average of 7 months or 9 months, and they didn't know. What did they know? So being able to detect something has gone wrong, being able to detect you're out of disk space, being able to detect the server is down, being able to detect you're out of bandwidth. These are all operational, digital operational issues. It's not all about the GRU hacking into a system or Unit 61398 or something. It's not about, the nation state hackers, just that element of it. That's often what people just think cybersecurity is. But we wrap that into digital resilience. The business is much more interested in digital resilience than they are in cybersecurity, because the cybersecurity headline, um, it's kind of it's kind of sexy, right? Get in, steal the money and all that kind of stuff, and they think that that's what it's all about. But it's very hard to wrap your head around big business decisions around that. But being able to say that you can make a business resilient, all of its digital infrastructure, that you are prepared for things to go wrong, that you will detect and you respond to your the aspects, and it's a great question because you've asked about disaster recovery and business continuity. They're cousins of each other, and they're often very confused in an organization, especially when you talk to IT departments.
Yeah.
They think they're the same thing. So, business continuity uh, will be about reducing the likelihood of something happening and improving your chances to recover from that based on a BIA.
Mhm.
That's the heart and soul of Dora, by the way. That
Yeah.
is the heart
Yeah.
and soul of Dora. So people have been doing that with ISO standards, great, because they're a long way there. And disaster recovery is often what gets the focus from a CIO IT perspective, where they think it's just about going back to the day of old backup tapes. Got something going on. We can get
Hmm.
systems back up. It's much broader than that. It's the legal side of it.
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
communication side of it. It's the optics. It's all of these things, and it means that it's managed holistically in an organization as well.
Yeah, it's very comprehensive, and as you mentioned, DORA actually already, of course, requires not only resilience but actually requires active participation from the boards, from the senior management in actually making this resilience happen. NIS 2 also up to the point, not
Mm.
maybe so much, but it's also going in this direction. Now, how do you actually get the boards to actually accept this idea that they are also responsible, not only the boards, also the senior executives? How do you actually make them understand that they are also have to participate actively in this resilience?
So
building
what I found the
resilience?
most effective thing to do is, and I'm not a religious person, but sometimes you have to put the hands into the wound of Jesus because you'll always have a doubting Thomas there from the point of view of them believing that this is there. So you can talk ad nauseum about the benefits of digital resilience, why it's a great idea, fantastic, blah, blah, blah. But get back to the point I made earlier about people being selfish. And all of a sudden, you bring up a slide, you take a quote out of Dora, which is unambiguous Article 5 or whatever. You say, here you go, guys. You're on the hook for this. And then they go, oh, really? So they'll never do that. That's going to be like GDPR, they're never really going to do anything about it. And then you bring up an example, like I just mentioned, say the Trustee Savings Bank and somebody getting fined £81,000. Personal accountability. I have one slide, there's only two words on it, and I use it with boards personal accountability. And everything stops in the room then because they realize we're
Mhm.
personally accountable for this. And it's a
Yeah,
pause.
yeah.
We've got to the point where for example, we run these 2-day boot camp briefings for board level. The
Hmm.
Certified Digital Operation Resilience Officer. And the reason we do that piece is it's we understand that there's a challenge in getting the time to maybe do courseware and work your way through and so on. So we round them up and get them in a room with a peer group and we say, okay, guys, 8 o'clock in the morning start, 3 o'clock finish. We're doing nothing but this. UK Operation Resilience Framework, NIS2, DORA. Throw all the stones at us. Let's get through this and let's understand what we're meant to do legally, what the law says, as opposed to what is good advice from a good advisor or something that could be subjective. Like, how do we actually get through this stuff? You can't leave it grey with a board. It has to be black and white. You have to hammer it in and say the law says you need to do this, and you're personally accountable. It
Hmm.
literally needs to distill it down to that level. Something like a directive in NIS too. I can understand busy, arrogant business leaders maybe just go, yeah, we'll see, and they kind of their experience has taught them that's going to take a little while before they feel the bite of something like that. But with Dora,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
different attitude. Validation assessments already taking place. The ESAs are well lined up. The competent authorities are well lined up. And the knee-jerk reaction I'm seeing anyway is when INEDs, executive directors, and so on are all going, hang on a second, I'm on the hook for this stuff.
Yeah. And do you find these kind of workshops with the senior management enough, or is there anything else that needs to be done to
The,
kind of make this
So
shift?
I think that the shift piece is there's a realization to my point about skin in the game is they've dedicated 2 days of their life maybe to go into a workshop like that. So they are focused. They're walking away then with the ongoing ability to engage with not just a peer group or a vendor who's obviously we've got skin in the game. We're trying to sell more services, more education, all those kind of things.
Hmm.
But they have that ongoing support piece, and they need to realize that it's their show to run, and who they choose to help them is up to them. But if you empower leaders properly, that's it. They buy, you don't sell to them. Even an idea, never mind a service. They get it. They're successful. They're at the top of their game. They're leaders of maybe a financial organization. So what they're looking for is the continuity of knowledge, the continuity of care, the continuity of somebody with their finger on the pulse, being able to be their guide and their go-to person on something. Very much akin to even a personal trainer in a gym. They just want to know that they have a go-to person on a specific subject. Their mindset is, I have an
Yeah.
expert on that. That's why
Hmm.
they're successful.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Mhm. Okay, in most cases, these larger companies have already some kind of enterprise risk management, and they manage, financial risk, currency risk, market risk, all
Mhm.
of these kinds of risk. Now, how to actually integrate cyber risk into this enterprise risk management? So, from your point of view, what kind of techniques are needed to actually integrate all of these
So
things?
with large organizations, it's primarily you're going to be run from the ERM out. So whatever they're doing, you're not going to reinvent it for them. So what we tend to do is have a kind of harmonization approach where we will explain what the terminology and the definitions are within something like DORA. So for example, we come up and I'm sure you're well aware of the
Mhm.
definition of resilience in DORA, this horrible A4 page of what they see. It's a big legalese catch-all statement. And internally in that organization, they may have a different term. So we need to make sure terms like significant, terms like critical, really key piece. How do you grade things, all of those things. So the commonality of the languages first, be the commonality of the understanding of the piece. The rest of it follows through then, because if the ERM side of the house understands that this regulation, these systems, and they can do it in this way, it's again that collective effort of working holistically where the teams internally integrate and they work at how they're going to do this. And it is on a case by case basis, but the principle is exactly the same. It's you can't walk into an organization, start telling them um, a mature ERM system that they've invested millions and millions in years and years of work, and then tell them, oh no, that's all rubbish. It has to be done this way for Dora. It's often a nexus of mapping as well, and
Mm-hmm.
it's even, for example, when we're working with organizations, we'll often, if they haven't an established framework in place, we'll often say, well, okay, use the NIST CSF 2.0 framework. Now let's map that out. Let's map that to DORA. Let's map that to the UK Operational Resilience Framework. You know, so you're not operating then in silos and all those kind of things. It's the same with enterprise risk management. If they've got different terminology, how does that relate in? Where does that fit into DORA as well?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I've seen some financial institutions that actually place their cybersecurity functions within, let's say, a bigger, let's say, part of the organization which is focused on risk. So let's say that they have a risk, I don't know, a business unit that handles all kinds of risks, and then they put cyber under that risk, let's say, business unit. So do you think it's a good practice actually to have cyber under a general risk business
Yeah,
unit, or you,
that's a tricky one. I think what we've seen recently, certainly I've come across recently, uh, findings, auditors and competent authorities where they're not happy where cyber's sitting in organizations. And I think to say point blank it should sit under risk, 9 times out of 10 that may be fine, but in certain environments that may not be fine. But certainly it shouldn't sit under the CIO.
yeah, of
That
course,
that's
yeah,
but yet the amount of organizations you walk into and say, where does cybersecurity sit? Let's say it's a legal firm. The legal firm doesn't really
hmm
differentiate in their mind between IT and cybersecurity, and they go, well, we'll put cybersecurity under. They're all geeks. We'll just put it all under the CIO because we only have to deal with one geek at the board.
yeah.
Rather than somebody else than that. But
Well,
yeah,
one is
one is
enough,
enough.
right?
You have to deal with. So I think realistically, it's a risk function. It's probably closest to sitting with there. I find when I deal with CROs, they get it faster than anybody else.
hmm
CIOs aren't as fast, in my experience, of understanding what we're talking about because they're delivering
Yeah,
services, they're delivering innovation, and for them, it's keeping a system on. The pain of regulation, the pedestrian level of writing policies and procedures and tying up resources and budgets doing that. They just don't see the benefit in most cases until they need them.
it's keeping them
Yeah.
down. Yeah.
I mean, even like if you go to a CIO and a question about level four evidence, they're looking at you like it's the first time they've ever heard the term. This is fundamental for any of these regulations is, where's your evidence that you do what you say you do? And often the fines come from not cyber resilient, not being digital resilient, but not being able to prove you are. And I think
Mhm.
that's on a board level to revert back to what we spoke about earlier. On a board level, although many people say that I'm going too detailed sometimes when I'm talking to the board on these levels, I do take the opportunity to explain to them the difference between a policy process and a procedure and what a level four level is. I go through the document pyramid with them. I say, you have to understand this stuff a little bit. I said, just get your hands dirty a little bit on this and understand
Yeah.
because you may have a false sense of security that everything is fine because you know they got some documents and they created some policies and something gave them that comfort that everything's fine. But I know it's about running and operating a management system around those things, making sure they are being operated, that they are producing the evidence. And I use mundane examples, Jason, where I'll say to them, if it's a small company, I'll say, they have a server room. Say, who has access to the server room? With great you know, pride, they'll tell me, "Oh, you can't go into the server room unless you sign into the log." I go, "Okay, well, show me the last time somebody signed in." And you find out nobody signed in 2 weeks. You go, "Well, you have no evidence." And then tell me, "You told me your board was trained. Where's the training records?" "Oh, we don't have those training records."
Hmm.
So you don't have the evidence that these
Hmm.
things are done. Okay, well, when's the last time you patched your
Yeah.
systems? Oh, we patch them every time. Every month we do patching. Okay, show me the change management records. We don't have them.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Okay, one of the biggest challenges now and is really supply chain risks, right? And actually, this is the whole chapter
Yeah,
within DORA. One of the main
yeah.
four chapters is about supply chain. So, um, uh, and I mean, this risk is obviously bigger and bigger the more companies are dependent on each other. So, how to actually grasp, how to actually tackle this problem? Because it's obviously not only security
Mm.
that is involved here; it's also purchasing department. It's also, I don't know, IT department, obviously. So, what actually role do boards need to have when it comes to supply chain security and resilience to make this right?
Okay, this is good because this is about meaningful metrics. Okay, so I
Hmm.
personally, it's a kind of a bug on the supply chain piece because there's so many bullshit systems out there being sold that say they will assess a vendor and give you a score, and they're just they're just algorithms with dashboards and stuff like this. And yeah, we can talk through what they actually do, but do they have anything meaningful to that organization in the context of the organization, everything else like that? Is it really there? Is it not there? So when you think of how this works traditionally in an organization, I will bring this up at board level and walk through an example, which would be somebody, let's say at a senior management level, wants an application or a piece of software technology installed. And they go, okay, that's great. We have a procurement process. And part of that procurement process is they're going to send out a spreadsheet of questions to the vendor. And the vendor knows to get the sale, they have to answer pretty much everything yes. They'll answer things, but they'll be open, subjective questions. They're not going to be declarative statements. They're not going
Yeah.
to be an attestation. It's going to be, do you have anti-malware? Do you take backups? It's not of any real value this kind of stuff. And then when it comes back in,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
evaluates that spreadsheet? It gets sent down to not the highest level of the IT department, but somebody maybe the IT department that just goes, is that okay? So someone in procurement will then say, is this okay? You're the IT geek. Can you tell me, can you bless this and tell me it's okay for us to order this system? Are they going to push back and say that the senior manager can't have the new toy they want? No. So they just go for an easy life. Yes, that's okay. That goes in. 5 years, 10 years later, that system's now being used by 100 people or 100 employees in the organization. It's now in the organization, and it's a key piece. So there's a massive failure piece around that. So there's an opportunity here for organizations to take a fresh look at all of this and say, how are we doing this? It's not good. It's not good enough. Procurement is now a regulated function under DORA. So whoever's head of procurement is responsible for everything that goes on in there, and they need to trust the metrics. So when I say meaningful metrics, if the people in procurement don't know how that metric came about, then it's rubbish. They need to understand the scoring, how it came about, and is it something they can trust? Because nobody's going to be 100% perfect. They're going to need to be able to trust what those findings are and say, well, look, this is a supplier that we're working with, and we see that they're not great maybe around security awareness training in their organization, but we still want to deal with them. But we're going to give them 3 months or 6 months to get their act together and to improve their posture because we don't just want to leave them and find, an alternative. So those kind of collaboration pieces are really, really important. Um, I also think this brings about an amazing opportunity for smaller companies and mid-sized companies who, although have less budgets and sometimes less resources, they tend to take this a lot more seriously and they can demonstrate a stronger case than the bigger companies. The bigger companies should be able to just smash door and go, yeah, we've got this, that, and the other. But it just doesn't need to be like that. And they will be caught in a different net with the ESAs anyway. But so I think there's an opportunity here for those smaller companies to thrive if you can get in front of this. Going back to my terminology in reference to trust, if they can sell trust to their client base and say, you can come and deal with us because we are DORA compliant and we do this, we understand it, we can report on it, and we can even make your regulation reporting easier because we're going to be able to provide everything to you. That's a great opportunity for businesses to make themselves stronger and to win more business as well. So yeah, I think that, look, the whole pillar on that within Dora itself, it's not perfect, but it's a lot. It's a good guideline for people to work their way through. And again, because it's a regulated function, and it's integrated with everything else within DORA holistically. It's something that can certainly be. I'd struggle to think of any organization I've come across that couldn't improve in this area.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Again, as I said, as I started that conversation off with, is I think it's because it's a pain. There's a lot of processes involved. There's a lot of different moving parts. And if someone comes along and goes, "Hey, buy this tool over here," and all you do is type in the company name and press a button, and we'll give you a score. Magic beans. Yeah.
yeah.
Anybody want to buy some magic beans? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and there is actually a very good this regulatory technical standard related to DORA, which actually explains the
Yeah.
details on how to handle
Mm.
suppliers. So it's also a very good, I would say, a guidance on how to do it. Okay, so to wrap up the call today, so what would you be your main, let's say, suggestions to CISOs on how to deal with boards when it comes to cyber security or resilience?
Um, I think there's probably a couple of different things I could say here, Dejan, but I would say that the step one, if we were talking to CISOs on this call, or at that level, and they want to communicate with the board, I would say first step one, do some navel gazing and self reflection. What's your communication style and ability like? Are you going in there and impressing them with acronyms and all these kind of things, or do you really know the business? Know the business, know your audience, even more than your own subject matter. You have your subject matter. You know what you're trying to say, and you have the subject matter of you know being a CISO within an organization, where the risks are, where the pain points are, all those things. But you have to know your audience, and you have to know how to best to communicate with them. And it even goes back. I mean, I remember this in the early days of my career, and start to go into boards. You're intimidated by the environment. You're intimidated by level of people and so on like that. And it's set like that on purpose. Like, let's be honest. And so I went, okay, where do these guys buy their suits? Because I thought I had a nice suit. And then I found out the very best tailor in Europe happened to be in Ireland. I knew that all of these guys that they went to this particular tailor. So I started going buying all these fancy suits and stuff like that. So when I walked in, I go, yeah, I'm your peer. I'm at your level, right? Let's have the conversation. I cannot tell you the difference in the reception you get than if you walk in say polo shirt, t-shirt, or now it's a little bit different since COVID. They don't expect the tie. Okay, right, that's great. But that's their ilk. That's their culture. That's what they've come from, and that's what they expect to see. Now, if I was dealing with a company in California and I turned up in a suit, or if I was in Dubai and turned up in a suit, I'm going to be laughed out of it. Right? So you just need to know your audience and where you're going. Try and relate to them as
Yeah,
much as
yeah.
possible. Empathy, relating to them. You already have the knowledge. You need to relate to your audience and understand the background of these people, where they're coming from, and trust the process. Convey the information. Do the best job you
Hmm.
can do. Your job is to empower them, share knowledge with them, and let them make decisions. And if
Hmm.
during that navel gazing, you realize you're not the best communicator in with writing skills, you're not the best communicator in a room, then work on that. I know people find it hard to believe, but I was once very shy and was not great at public speaking and all those good things. And now I go around the world public speaking and things like that because I focused on the weak muscle. I focused on where I needed to improve upon it as much as possible. I was in the server room being a genius, setting up networks and all that. I was going, I need to tell these people what they need to do. Then found the voice through the confidence of being able to do that. And so that would be my killer tip for CISOs. They have the knowledge of being a CISO and cybersecurity and the different standards and regulations and all that. I'm sure. It's more that human communication element is the piece that's missing. Uh, Last point of that is it's a particular issue and challenge around leadership at the moment with Gen Z in the workplace. And now they're finding a lot of these large organizations that there's no leaders. If you're a CISO, you're a leader. So where's your leadership skills coming from? Are you a natural leader, or is this something you have to
Yeah.
work on every day? Do you have natural charisma, and all those kind of things? And these are things that can be, I won't say faked, but they can be improved upon. People can improve their skills, but it's definitely something that's been noticed in the market. It's not necessarily subject matter. It's a challenge for you to learn. It's being able to harness people. What kind of individual can walk into a room, have a lawyer, head of procurement, CEO? maybe an CIO, all in the room, all listen to you, all agree with you at the end of the day, or at least be a politician to be able to get them to agree to the next step, whatever's happening.
Hmm.
That's, yeah,
Yeah.
that's communication skills.
Okay, great. Thank you. These are really great insights, and it's been a pleasure talking to you,
It's been a
Paul.
real
Thank you.
pleasure. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks again, Paul, and thank you everyone for listening or watching this podcast. And see you again in 2 weeks' time in our new episode of Secure and Simple podcast. Thanks for making it this far in today's episode of Secure and Simple podcast. Here's some useful info for consultants and other professionals who do cybersecurity governance and compliance for a living. On Advisera website, you can check out various tools that can help your business. For example, Conformia software enables you to streamline and scale ISO 27001 implementation and maintenance for your clients. White label documentation toolkits for NIS2, DORA, ISO 27001 and other ISO standards enable you to create all the required documents for your clients. Accredited lead auditor and lead implementer courses for various standards and frameworks enable you to show your expertise to potential clients. And a learning management system called Company Training Academy with numerous videos for NIS2, DORA, ISO 27001 and other frameworks enable you to organize training and awareness programs for your clients' workforce. Check out the links in the description below for more information. If you like this podcast, please give it a thumbs up. It helps us with better ranking, and I would also appreciate if you share it with your colleagues. That's it for today. Stay safe.